Hello, everyone. So, if you have ever wondered about what goes on in private schools and wondered, how your child would improve or soar, even if you had, unlimited money and could send your child to a private school, I'm going to give you a little secret on what they do, particularly with kids who have language based learning disabilities. And that is, I talked a bit already earlier this week about music and sound frequency therapy and so forth. And today I want to just give you a deeper picture into that and understand that, music actually is not just something we've invented as humans. We're actually hardwired for music. It's actually part of human biology almost, okay? So let me give you an example first. Lucas was in grade 5 and had a really hard, severely dyslexic, had dysgraphia, among other typical things that we see, poor focus and sensory processing and all those kind of umbrella labels / symptoms that we see when the brain is disorganized or there's biochemical imbalances. And I'm going to be totally honest, I was really concerned that I was not going to be able to help him. I had just started out into this at that point, and I had actually just started out, I hadn't just started out, but I was only a couple years in, and I just started getting into sound therapy, and I was really not sure how this would turn out with him. And obviously I was concerned that it was not going to work as well as the studies say. It's always that fear with practitioners until you see it with your own clients. Is this going to work as well as the studies show? And what happened, I told mom, I was totally upfront about all of this. And she had heard good things and she was like, no, I want to do this. Lucas actually went up, I can't remember how many reading levels, but by the end of the 6-month program, he had gone from a kindergartenish reading level to grade 4, and he was in grade 5, and they knew he was going to continue to go up because he had gone up so well. All of a sudden, everything came together because, again, whenever those lower brain levels are developed, kids can suddenly learn the things that we've been trying to teach them in a million different ways with all kinds of extra hours and practice and tutoring and so forth. And just to remind you, yes, we've heard that, dyslexic kids and kids with dyspraxia and dysgraphia and all these different disorders have a different brain structure, and that's absolutely true when we do the brain imaging scans, but the brain is not like a Ford car versus, I don't know, like a BMW. It's not like they're totally different engines or something, and you can't change the parts. The brain is plastic. The brain is like a tree, and we can grow new branches. And so those brain structures can change. And they've seen that on these brain imaging scans, which is just not talked about enough. If you've checked out the book, The Brain That Changed Itself, or The Brain's Way of Healing, one of my favorite books by Dr. Newman Doidge, and it talks all about this. So yes, your child might have a brain structure where, the left side is underactive and the right side is overactive, and that's why he has dyslexia. But that doesn't mean that it's permanent if we stimulate the brain in the right way. So enough of that kind of rant, if you will, on the brain and its plasticity. It's important to understand the way that music impacts this is music goes through the same pathway as language does. But if your child's having a hard time with reading and writing and that pathway isn't really stimulated, I kind of say it's kind of like a dirt road if you're lucky, that it's going to be hard to get them to further accelerate or improve their language skills if it's just not doing it. And a way to kind of speed that process up and really get those workers in there to build a highway, if you will, is to use music, because music has been found because it goes through the same pathway and because it stimulates not only the auditory nerve, but it stimulates the cortex, it stimulates the lower brain levels. And when that sound goes through, as I mentioned, when that sound goes through that auditory nerve, it goes to the brain, right? It creates that stimulation that promotes generation of new neurons and new connections. But some of it goes to the motor system. And as you've learned, the motor system is the absolute foundation for higher cognitive processes that are needed for learning, reading, and writing. So it's basically a fast track to better learning, reading, and writing, and it helps to open that pathway for language without having to do all kinds of hours of language. So this is why there are such amazing results with reading and writing and so forth with these different sound frequency therapies that a lot of educational therapists and so forth use in clinics. So just to give you a little brief background, which I'll get into more detail of how this all works in future videos, Dr. Tomatis actually came out with this in 1950. This is not new science. It's just being used more and more for all kinds of different things. And, it's now being used in hospitals for stroke and brain injury recovery. It's being used in physiotherapy clinics, and it's being even used with athletes. I had one student our client who used it, and it actually significantly improved his hockey. The coach was asking, do you guys have another coach that he's working with? Because he couldn't believe how much his coordination had improved. Yeah, his focus and reading improved, but even it overspilled in other areas. So basically how sound therapy works is it uses acoustically filtered music to help develop those lower brain levels. So if you follow me for a while, you know if those lower brain levels are weak, then the higher brain levels will have a hard time doing their actual job, which is those higher order skills like reasoning, planning, organizing, impulse control, emotional regulation, all those executive functioning skills that kids lack when they have learning and behavioral issues. So what happens basically is the cortex takes over the shaky foundation or the job of the weak lower brain levels that aren't doing their job. And so if the cortex is doing the job of, balance and coordination and all these things, and it's not designed to do that job, it's not going to do the best job, but it's better than no one doing it. And then it's not free to do all of those executive functioning skills that we want kids to do. So, again, Lucas went up these, several grade levels, did amazing improvements. And I admit at the time I was just totally shocked that he made these improvements because I hadn't seen that before. And you have to keep in mind, I was a full-time teacher in a classroom with kids for many years, almost 15 years. And I saw so many kids fall through the cracks, very rarely make any progress, and whatever progress they made was at a snail's pace. So it was very hard for me to believe that something could work so well and so quickly to accelerate the process. And yet, so now I use it all the time. And then that's when I started, when I did get into it and then learned more and more and heard more and more about how it is used in private schools. So if you're wondering, I wish I could send my kid to a private school if I had lots of money, my kid wouldn't be struggling. Yes, that's true. Probably, but that doesn't mean that they don't have to. You can still find other ways to get the private school experience or strategies without actually having them enrolled in a private school. And sound frequency therapy, which I do offer in my program, is definitely a way to do that. So just remember, there's a lot of programming out there or kind of old science that we have deeply ingrained into us that kids' brains can't change. Brain structures can change. The science is there absolutely, and don't let anyone tell you any differently. So if you like this video, please share. And if you haven't grabbed my free starter kit, the Laser Focused Learner, with some exercises and nutrition tips to get you started on all of addressing all of these multiple diagnoses, these umbrella type symptoms, in order to get to the root cause, which is a disorganized brain and a brain chemistry that is not balanced. Thanks for watching.